Hey guys, welcome to the Old Ultra Runner channel. I'm your host Jay Tynert, and today I wanted to do a old running story of the year I ran the 100th running of the Boston Marathon. It was in 1996. I had run a couple marathons, one in 1993, the New York City. I'd run Dallas White Rock in 1994. And I decided I wanted to train and try to qualify for the Boston Marathon in 1996, which was going to be the 100th running. I was training really hard. I thought I might have possibly have the speed to qualify, but I wasn't sure. I'd never run anything close to fast enough time, but I just had training runs that kind of indicated it might be possible. In the spring of 95, I became engaged to my wife, but I was still training hard. I was doing races in the fall of 95. I bought my first treadmill in November of 95 as I was training. But in the late in the summer of 95, for the Boston Marathon in 1996, they had a lottery. Because there was so much demand for the Boston Marathon that year. You always had to qualify and run a qualifying time, as it is today, but they were going to allow more people in that year. And the most they had normally had in a year with qualifiers was about 10,000. But that year they decided that they were going to expand the field and allow more people in, but they weren't reducing the qualifying standards. They did let in some more people via charity runners, and they had a lottery that they allowed like 5,000 people in that way. But there were so many people that ran qualifying times that year, they didn't adjust it, and they allowed in, I think, by far the largest Boston field ever. There ended up being like 38,000 runners in 1996. Well, I was very fortunate. They pulled the names in the summer, and I was one of the 5,000 names that got pulled and got in through the lottery for the 1996 Boston Marathon. I still kept training hard, but my focus for really trying to run a real fast time, a hard qualifier, was gone because the incentive was gone. I'd already made it in. And like I said, I'd only run 2 marathons at that point. I'd done 4:37 with cramping issues in 1993, and in 1994 I ran like a 4:19 at White Rock. That one was kind of stupid because I hadn't really been training, and I saw in November of 94, I was like talking to my friend, and I'm like, last year we ran New York City this day. I should run another marathon. So I decided to do the White Rock Marathon 4 weeks later. So I went from basically no training to running a marathon in 4 weeks. So my time at Dallas White Rock was not real great either, but I did finish it. But anyway, so I was training pretty hard. I was doing a lot of shorter races in the fall of 95. I did finally run I ran the Cowtown Marathon in early 96, February of 96, and the Boston was going to be in April of 96. I was in fairly good shape, but I didn't want to overcook it and wear myself out or hurt myself. I had a lot of injury problems in the 90s, so I didn't want to hurt myself, so I tried to take it fairly easy at the Cowtown. Now, I've got notes written down that I remember taking it easy toward the end. I wrote that I walked 2.5 of the last 4 miles intentionally to save my legs for training for Boston. But I still ran like a 3:49, which was by far my PR, and it actually stood as my PR for quite a while, for several years, because I came close several other times, but I never really beat it. I kept having injury problems and was never able to up my mileage a lot. Never was able to run a lot of miles. I ran several other marathons just under 4 hours, but didn't beat that 3:49 time for several years. Anyway, we went into Boston. It was my traveled with my wife. We got married in October. Um, we traveled to Boston. We got a nice hotel room. Um, we were still trying to save money. We were newlyweds and not had just we're moving into a new house, so our funds were a little short. But we flew into Boston. We stayed in a hotel, but we actually even I was concerned about what I was going to eat the night before the marathon, so we actually flew with one of the little plug-in hot stove things, and we actually cooked in our hotel room. We cooked pasta and stuff in the hotel room for the night before the race. And we were there a couple days, so afterwards, so we did go out and eat in some nicer places in Boston while we were there. But um, the night before the race, it was just a cooked pasta meal in the hotel room. Um, the morning of the race, uh, I had to go catch a subway, the very first one I could catch at 5:15 a.m. from our hotel uh, over to downtown Boston. It went across the Charles River and got to downtown, and so I could catch the buses that left, I think at like 5:45 a.m. or something like that. Being a non-qualifier, getting in through the lottery, I was given the less preferred time. So I had to get on a bus at like 5:45 that took us from Boston out to Hopkinton. It was you run 26.2, but it was probably the way the roads went. It might have been 30 miles or something, but they bussed us out to Hopkinton. So I was there in Hopkinton by 6:30 a.m. Back in those days, the race didn't start till noon. So I was basically sitting there. We were sitting out in a field waiting around from 6:30 a.m. till noon, till the noon start. It was pretty crowded. I remember and it was below freezing in the morning. It was like in the upper 20s. So it was pretty cold. I had on extra jackets. I had on a trash bag. You were able to load your stuff just back onto the bus to return it home, so you didn't have to keep it with you the whole time. But I didn't have a lot of stuff with me, but I kept like a garbage bag on me, and I sat on a garbage bag because the ground was wet from moisture from there had been snow the previous week. So we sat on a cold ground, and it was very cold, and I didn't get up often enough to go to the bathroom. The bathroom lines were long, and I was afraid of losing my little spot of ground to sit on, so I didn't go to the bathroom very much. So I wasn't drinking enough either during that almost 5.5 hours waiting for the race. Another rookie mistake that I make several times over the years. So I did end up paying for that later. I had some dehydration issues and some cramping, which is a common theme, especially with it happened even in my most recent race, but it was a very common theme in all my races, first marathons. But it actually was a beautiful day once it got to noon. I think we started out in the 40s, and it probably got into the 50s, maybe 60 by the end. It was a gorgeous day once it warmed up, and we started there were a bunch of waves, but you just basically lined up in your corrals, and the fast people started off first, and we all started right behind them. And the 38,000 people were all across the start line within 20 minutes. I don't remember how. Yeah, I think my official time, I can look on my card here in a little while, was 4 hours and 30 minutes from the gun. But my net time was 4 hours and 10 minutes. So it did take me 20 minutes to get to the start line because I was in probably one of the very back corrals. The Boston Marathon was actually that year, because they knew they were going to have this enormous field for the first time. It was their first time they had ever used chip timing. In fact, it was one of the first chip timed races there ever were. There might have been a few triathlons that did it before, but running races, it was one of the very first chip timed races. I did actually the White Rock Marathon the year prior, actually had a chip, which is the first chipped race I had ever run. And that one was kind of strange. It was Texas Instruments was based in Dallas, and they made the chip, and it went on the back of the race number. But their chip never took off as the standard. The chip was a little different for, I can't even remember how it worked. It might have been one that went around your ankles or in your shoes or something for Boston, and we had to return it at the end. But it was one of the very first chip timed races, so we actually got a gun time and a net time. The race was a lot of fun. The day prior to the race, my wife and I took a bus tour of the course. We paid and they took you, rode a bus, which I did the morning of, out to Hopkinton, but we took a tour bus out to Hopkinton the day before, and they drove you along the course, and they stopped at like the running store that Bill Rogers owned at one time, and we stopped at several. We were kind of paralleling the tracks, which is what the Boston course does, because in the early years the train would go and take people to the different checkpoints, and the actual checkpoints they took on the race were like at 6.3 and 9.6 or whatever. They were just at points that the train stopped, and that's where they would stop and take time checks on the runners. So we got to go see the John Kelly statue and several of the points along the course. I got to see a preview of the Newton Hills the day before the race. One of the things that was cool on the race is on that tour is they did a quiz about the Boston Marathon history. And I had read just prior to going, I'm a big history buff, and I love marathoning. So I had read this book that was called The Boston Marathon, The History of the World's Premier Running Event, that had just been written a few years earlier. And it went through 1993 with the full history. Well, I ate this book up and I read it. So when they did the quiz on the bus, I got the most answers right of anyone. I won the trivia contest. So I was given this sweatshirt with the BAA for Boston Athletic Association. And for years, I still have this sweatshirt, obviously. The t-shirt we got from running the race was a cotton t-shirt that has worn out, and I have gotten rid of it since. But I still have the sweatshirt. And I wore this for years, and I like going and telling people, I went to the Boston Marathon, and I won this sweatshirt at the Boston Marathon. That was the story I told anyway. So that was a fun memory, and it was fun seeing the course the day before with my wife. Anyway, so the course started at noon. The race started at noon. I guess I actually got on the course by 12:20. That course, of course, starts very much downhill, so it's easy running, easy to go too fast. I tried to keep things under control, pretty check. I don't really remember my times exactly. I know I was faster the first half than in the second half. It was a lot of fun, the downhill portion, and then it never really gets tough until you hit the Newton Hills, which aren't enormous hills, especially now that I've been ultra running and done a lot of trail races. The Newton Hills aren't really that big, but they hit about the time my hydration had run out. So I was cramping a little bit. I struggled through the Newton Hills, and I've got notes written down from the race that I started cramping in the Newton Hills and really slowed down. So again, I had some walking in the second half of the race. Like I said, my net time was 4:10. So not horrible, not as bad as like my New York City experience or some other races, but not a real fast time. But I was more there to just soak in the experience. I wasn't really that worried about time. I hadn't really trained real hard after the Cowtown. I just did enough to know I could finish the race, and it was a ball. So I get to the finish. I crossed the finish line down in I guess it's the Boston, they call it the Boston Commons, that famous park that they have it in. And my wife got to see me come across. I found her after the race. We rode the subway back to the finish. There was talk about people going down to the party down at Fenway Park after the race that evening, but I was just tired. I hung out at the hotel, so we just stayed in the hotel and then went out to eat at a nice restaurant the next day and traveled back. But it was quite an experience. This is the medal I got from 1996. I'm going to show a few keepsakes over here that I got. Let me just go do that now. Okay, so this was the poster I got at the Boston Marathon. My dad built the frame for it later, but we got it framed, and this hung above our fireplace for several years. I've actually don't have it hung up right now, but you'll see it says Boston Marathon from 1896 to 1996, and shows the date we ran, which was April 15th, 1996. So very cool. Over here in my book, I've got, this is the letter saying that they received my entry into the lottery and when the random selection dates would be. Here was my card I got in the mail congratulating me for being selected through the lottery, and I was going to be in the race. Here in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, they actually, local Fort Worth Star-Telegram in the paper listed all of the runners that were randomly selected from Texas, and my name is in here. Here was I think this was another of the local, I think it was Runner Triathlete News or whatever, and it showed all the runners from Texas that got into the Boston, and my name is here with it underlined in little arrows, and they're bound for Boston. Yeah, Runner Triathlete News. This is my race number. Back in those days, you would get, there was no online results, so you would get these little things in the mail for most races, and it would show you your finish time and your place. So this was my card with my finish time and my place. Now, like I said, the thing that was different about this one is it actually had the net finish time, because this is one of the chip timed races. And here's my comments that were in my training log that my wife wanted to put on here. I said, what a glorious run, beautiful weather, great crowds, quads started cramping in the Newton Hills. And then over here, this was the little wristband they gave me, and this indicated which corral I was supposed to go into. So you were supposed to be in the corral, so I was in the B corral. Here's a map of the course from 1996. Here is the headlines in the Boston Herald the day after the race. It shows that Uda Pepig had her third straight win at Boston that year. And this was the year that she had, but it was her third win in a row there. The men's winner, there had been a three-time winner going into this race, Cosmas Indetti, and he was a favorite, but he kind of faded and finished fourth. But that year, Moses Tanui won for the men, and he actually ended up winning three times because he won in 96, 98, and 2000, I think. But this is my photograph. We saw him in the airport when we were heading home. He was about to head home to Kenya, and we saw him in the airport. So this is a photograph of me seeing him in the airport. That reflection is making it hard to see, but he's right there. And then here's a picture, younger me. I think that was at the expo. And then this is, the light is not real good. This is me on the subway on the way to the race. Anyway, so those are my little keepsakes from Boston 96. I hope you enjoyed this little walk down memory lane. If you enjoyed this video, I'm putting out videos twice a week. Please like the video or subscribe to the channel. There'll be a new video
New videos out on Mondays and Thursday mornings. Thank you.